Hello and welcome to Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is August 4th, and I'm doing a combined level 1 and level 2 presentation that is basically all about how to navigate the time field effectively and why, let me grab this little sculpture, why freedom to think one's own thoughts is so very essential in order to be able to effectively choose where you drive on this map of time. So quick recap for anyone that is tuning in just right away. Chakras are energy centers on the body. They represent different levels of density or different layers of energy / consciousness / time moving at different rates. And that these shapes, this is the shape of two tori or two chakras at 90-degree angles, create this shape that is like the time field, and that this lower portion over here is what I usually draw in my little diagrams, and that when you hit this membrane over here, this curved membrane that I'm kind of tracing with my pen in virtual reality here, that curved membrane I call the membrane of death. It is like a flowing waterfall of energy beyond which the timelines cannot pass. So all of this is, you could look at this like a refinery in exactly the same way that we have, you know, a refinery of physical substance that might take some kind of ore and take out the things that are not gold and leave behind only the gold. That is the whole idea of this. But it is a very inefficient setup the way it presently is, because we were intended to be able to go directly to the center, to access directly the pure consciousness, the gold, and not have to go through all the rigmarole, have all the extra stuff that fills up all of the extra filler is the best way I can say it, that fills up the rest of the time field. So let me draw this and get more to what I'm talking about here. Just waiting for my little, here we go. If this is that lower quadrant, and this is the time field, and I draw this all the time, and each one of these blue timelines, these are all timelines that start here. This is birth, and time moves upward through the time field like this. And so these are little trajectories through time. You're moving through time, you're moving through time. And as you're moving through time, what is determining which timeline you are experiencing has to do with your insight. And this is an actual aspect of inner anatomy. So just like you have physical eyes that are physical apertures that we use to look at physical or semi-physical photons in reality, we also have our inner eye. And it is our inner eye that is part of the apparatus that we use to perceive time. So this is lesson 1 stuff, level 1 stuff, for a very large portion of what is called human history, humans have been defined as just red, orange, and yellow. That's the physicality, the animal emotions, and a little smear of human intellect on top of that, making that the definition of what humanity was. And that if you actually got to the level of heart, where you start to cultivate unconditional love, and unconditional love is not the airy-fairy hippie ideal or romantic love of wanting to hug and kiss someone. It is literally a tone. Here I'll play an A. It's a tone. That unconditional love is a tone that you make when you are moving through time at one moment per moment, or at exactly the right rate, where you're not lagging behind or racing ahead. And it's part of being in partnership with the time field, because this is the expression of a metabolism of a much larger being. So just like we have individual cells that circulate throughout our larger organic multicellular body, little, you know, red blood cells, and all those little cells have to be healthy and going in the right direction for the totality to be healthy. Same thing with the time field. We are like these little circulating pieces of energy that are like the red blood cells going around the body, and we circulate through organs of time and through vessels of time, like this membrane that I was highlighting there. You could consider that to be like a blood vessel that carries blood and energy and nutrients around the body. And if it's blocked up, then that body is unhealthy. This is the time body of a much larger being. And so it is our insight. I'll bring up these little pictures. So all of this, what I'm talking about right now, this is based on lesson 4 of level 1 and also lesson 4 of level 2. So I'll bring up some of those pictures so that you see, and I'm squinting and scrolling. I'm making my funny faces that I do in order to find my pictures. Here we go. This is one of the ones, and this is one of the other ones, and this is one of the other ones. I'm totally organized. So these are little sketches that I did in order to show this aspect of energetic anatomy that I'm just highlighting in red because that's the easiest color for me to use right now, but it's technically not part of the red chakra. Technically, this is part of the blue and violet areas of the color-coded system of consciousness and layers of awareness in your body. So you have the energy field that is created from the whirling and twirling vortex of your heart, making unconditional love, making that tone of unconditional love as you move through time. And that stabilizes this apparatus up here, and that's the higher faculties. And the higher faculties are comprised of the brow chakra, that is kind of like a lens that is in front of your face, and it's on the seeing on the anthropomorphic level, and it's insight. It's pure mind. It is pure mind that is not interpreted or clothed with words. And that pure mind is meant to be directed by this aspect of consciousness over here. That is the crown chakra, or that's the highest note. Here we go, the highest note in the human octave. And that's where we plug in to higher dimensional, less dense, higher organized aspects of thought and greater levels of energy in order to fuel us and give us ideas and inspiration. Here, wait. Let me switch to the next thing, because here's another view kind of from the top down, because you can see here's physical eye, but we're not talking about the physical eye. We're talking about this apparatus of perception that is about insight. So let me talk also, and I'll go, I have so many things to say, but first let me finish showing you these pictures. This also, this is a detail from a painting, but it shows very well the interplay of these two energy centers. And you can see how they're at 90-degree angles. One is oriented like this, and one is oriented like this, and that makes a 90-degree angle. And the importance of that is that they act like, if this is a very roughly drawn helicopter, okay, the helicopter has blades that go around the top, and it also has a rotor that goes around the tail area, and they're at 90-degree angles, just like these two aspects of energetic anatomy. And what that does is, if this is a helicopter flying along, those two rotating aspects of hardware stabilize this as it flies through the atmosphere. And this rotating apparatus stabilizes you while you fly through time, while you fly through the time field. So now you're beginning to understand that, so humanity has been screwed up for the past 10 or 20,000 years. Humanity has been genetically degraded in order to have minimally functioning higher faculties, and also our social and cultural milieu is designed to blind and dampen and reduce the healthy functioning of these organs on your body, in exactly the same way that our schooling system reduces the healthy functioning of your body. Like when you're a little kid and you run around all the time, and then you have to learn to go to school, and you have to learn to sit properly in your chair and not wiggle and not move around. And then what we're finding is that most kids get out of shape and they start to become obese. And then when they become older people and adults, then the whole challenge is getting people to get up to the gym and to run around and somehow use their exercise and use their muscles in order to stay fit and healthy. So this is exactly the same type of thing that happens in our world, and it is about attention. So, and I need to drink a little bit of water, and I'm sorry, I'm ducking off camera over here. Attention. This comes from attenuos. I should write that word down so you see what I'm talking about. I just have to pause for 1 second when the pencil comes up. Attention, from attenuos. This is ancient Greek, and it means to reach out towards. Let me just drink a little bit of water here. So that indigo chakra that I was just showing you various different drawings of, it is an emanation from here. So first, the order of operations is, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit, that's why fully enroll in the class, and then you get the recorded lessons I did very meticulously. These webinars, I tend to jump around a little bit because I also feel like I'm responding in real time to what's happening in our society. So what I recorded 4 years ago, that's the recorded homework lessons. And now we are literally in the birth canal, exiting these levels of denser reality and entering into a level of less dense reality, ducking off camera, that is made up of the combination of spirit and matter. or pure consciousness and matter, where energy and matter are no longer separated, but that they are now seamlessly combined, seamlessly intertwined, and our mind, our consciousness, our insight has a direct effect on reality. This is like a paintbrush that we are literally using instantaneously to paint reality, as opposed to creating a reality indirectly or affecting reality but not seeing instantaneous results, which is what we have been experiencing for a very long amount of time. And in order to effectively and ethically and beautifully affect the time field or paint this painting or make this symphonic music with everyone else, what we need to do is cultivate certain characteristics inside of ourselves. And ducking off camera over here. The way we cultivate those characteristics is by learning, going through this refinery and learning how to navigate the time field. So this is what this is all about and why this is effective. Now let's talk about attention and the things that affect our attention. So mostly when we are little tiny infants or little tiny children, our attention is free. However, as we begin to become part of the social and cultural milieu, we are cultivated. That's what culture is. And we're not allowed to think what we want to think anymore. So first you get implanted with the yellow level of the human operating system. So this is insight. To draw a distinction, thought that happens or perception that happens at this level is pure insight. That means it is not clothed with words. It has not gone through the level of interpretation that happens at the throat. That's like where the presents get wrapped in wrapping paper or they get unwrapped with wrapping paper. But the presents, the insights themselves, are these pure packets of understanding. And when the energy circulates through the chakra system, it goes from higher dimensional, less dense realms that give us that initial energy impulse that goes through our eye of insight and then is clothed with words and then goes through the heart, which is the central clearinghouse. It's like your CPU, central processing unit of your organic multicellular computer. And then here's my solar plexus, the area up above my belly button, but below the level of my chest. That solar plexus is the level of yellow, and that is what is known as and defined as the human mind. It's defined as the human mind by the human mind. However, humans did not originate the human mind. If we call it a computer program, you are not the programmers that created that program. And although you wear it or have it inserted into your operating system, into your hardware, into your software, it does not serve you. And this is the whole idea now of mindfulness and meditation, because blah, 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 blah. In the time, so trying to figure out how to say this effectively. My audience, everyone that I'm speaking to right now, we are all organic multicellular bodies. That means that with the 5 physical senses, we can all sense one another, and we all need to eat and metabolize physical food. And let's draw a distinction between that and non-physical beings that are beings of pure consciousness or particles of thought. And those particles of thought or particles of consciousness could be considered like an abstraction, like a note. Before I played that note, that concept of music existed, but it wasn't expressed physically. I had to have a little instrument over here, like the recording of the sound of a hammer hitting a string to make that note come into reality. So your brain is your fatty idea catcher. It is literally a gelatinous, fatty area of your body that can catch thoughts that are flying along that don't have a physical container. And so the whole idea is that each one of us gets to choose which thoughts we allow to enter our mind and which thoughts we allow to affect us and we give birth to or manifest into the world. Because all of those thoughts, like that abstraction of a C, before it has an instrument, it can come through my voice. I'm singing a note. It can come through the piano. The piano is playing a note. It can come through a violin. It can come through any instrument. It's the abstraction of that thought. Is that thought a worthy thought to come into the physical realm? Beings like you and I are supposed to be the gatekeepers or the determiners, the determining factors of whether an abstract thought is worthy of being manifested into the physical realm. We're supposed to be like, very choosy eaters. Like imagine there's a waiter coming around at some kind of fancy party with all sorts of tidbits and placing them in front of you and saying, you're looking at them, you're like, I don't know, do I want that? Do I want that? Do I want that? That's the one that I want. And you choose just the little thought that you want and you eat that little tidbit. That's what it's supposed to be like. That's what it's like when we have a fully functional Merkaba. And so, you know, again, this is, why do I speak about the Merkaba? Why do I teach people about this? It's because we're supposed to have that fully functional, like having a fully functional immune system that gives us the capacity to choose which thoughts we ingest, because choosing which thoughts you ingest literally determines which of these timelines you're on. Are you aligned with this central core possibility that by now everyone who takes this class understands that's desirable? That's like, that's good real estate. That's where I want to be. Or are you aligned with these divergent timelines, the timelines that go toward the periphery, the ones that end the membrane of death, sometimes horribly so? The answer is, of course, you don't want to be aligned with those possibilities and those timelines. So now let's talk about how our mind affects and our insight affects our trajectory through time. What you're thinking literally has an effect on the steering wheel of the vehicle of your car. And as soon as we're implanted with the hacked operating system known as the human mind, most people are not in control of their mind. Mostly it is now the hackers that are in control of your mind. So think about that. You come here as a little unformed being, mostly in early childhood or infancy, people become implanted with this human mind. And then all of a sudden you're not in control of yourself anymore. All of a sudden, something else is in control, and the something else are those occupiers of the interstices, because humanity used to be completely telepathic. Before our human genome was degraded, we didn't have to use laborious flapping of the moving mouth parts in order to say, please pass the ketchup. What I could do was just simply connect with you directly and give you the desire and the impression of what I needed, and you could clearly give to me what I needed. And that it was only after those faculties were degraded that it made it necessary to use this laborious way of talking. And this is the whole myth, the whole idea behind the myth of the Tower of Babel, the idea that humanity was once much more effectively connected, much more cosmopolitan in the sense of being able to share ideas over vastly different cultures, and that it is the language barrier that has prevented humanity from effectively joining forces together and raising the collective level of quality of life and existence on this planet. That if humans could more effectively communicate with one another, humans could more effectively work together, and there would be less dissension and less division. And this is absolutely true. And if we were telepathic with one another, we would be able to communicate the most effectively that we possibly could. So I'll also get into this. Right now, what we're experiencing on Earth with the technology that is in existence is a dampening of the natural higher faculties. And I use this analogy quite a lot. This is a personal anecdote, actually. So I used to live in Woodstock, New York. It's a lovely little small town right by Overlook Mountain. And Overlook Mountain has its own natural energy vortex, like a little penumbra of energy that when you're in the town, you're in that little bubble of energy. And it was a very telepathically connected bubble. It kind of amped up everybody's natural telepathy. And before the cell phone tower was built that affected Mount Overlook, everyone there used this network in order to talk to one another. So I was just talking with a friend today about the good old days before 2005. That was when cell phones didn't work in Woodstock. And if you wanted to find a friend, instead of calling them up and saying like, hey, what street are you on? Let's go meet at blah, blah place. You would walk to a place and you'd ask a friend, hey, I'm looking for so-and-so. You know where they are? No, I don't know where they are. Or maybe they're down there. Let's go look for them together. And I went on so many wonderful synchronistic adventures where I not only found my friend, but we had wonderful experiences along the way. And it was because we were all connecting through this mycelium. And mycelium, when I'm speaking about that, this is an analogy. Mycelium physically is, these are mushroom connector fiber integuments that happen beneath the level of the soil, and that connect not only mushrooms together with their fruiting bodies, but connect also plant roots together, and for the sharing of carbon and nitrogen and pheromones and all sorts of other wonderful nutrients. It is like a connector integument, and integument, this is like the cells in your body that hold things together. So the whole idea is we have this natural telepathic network that is based in vibration, that is being currently polluted and inhibited by the Wi-Fi and all of the artificial compensatory modes that have been created in order to supposedly give us these powers that we actually have as innate superpowers. And that because this artificial communication grid is so pervasive, that humans have not had an opportunity to experience and cultivate their natural communication grid. And that the more that the artificial communication grid is pervasive and stronger, because it's like you're trying to play your own music with the natural world that's very beautiful and very delicate, while someone else is going like this all the time. And that's horrible. That's not real music at all. And that those inhibitory frequencies, those are like what we're experiencing from Wi-Fi and cell phones and all of those things. So yeah, people ask me about this. This is shungite. This is what I've started wearing a lot because I'm in a big city area now where there's just Wi-Fi everywhere and smart meters everywhere, and I'm trying to hold my energy field as much as I possibly can. But what we really need to do as an awakening human culture is now begin to say we do not wish to expose ourselves to that level of frequency pollution, because not only does it harm the physical cellular structure, but it is inhibiting the cultivation and experience of our natural telepathic structure. And so this is the whole idea of being able to think your own thoughts affects your trajectory through time. Whatever you are thinking and paying attention to is what you are literally making an energetic bridge between yourself and that thing. So way long time ago, you all probably went to school. Everybody probably remembers being in grade school. The teacher said, tap, 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 class, pay attention. Like, don't look out the window over there, even though it's a sunny day and you want to go play outside. Don't look out the window over there. Don't look at your friend's shoes. Don't look at something over there. Don't think in your own mind about something that you want to play that's not here, that is because this is a boring schoolhouse. Don't pay attention to the things that you want to think about. Pay attention to this thing that is socially acceptable. And this is part of the basic programming. What you are attending to is what you are literally creating a bridge of awareness between yourself and that thing. And that thing is not just your teacher. If you're in grade school and your teacher says, okay, class, pay attention, it's not just that you're paying attention to one man or one lady at the front of the school. You're paying attention to and creating an energetic bridge between your mind, your burgeoning human operating system, and the mind of the rest of humanity. It's basically like saying, little children, open up your thumb drive of your mind so that we can put this, USB download into you so that you can connect with all the rest of the software. And so that's just the beginning of the journey of what happens with attention, because attention is also collected and harvested. And it's almost like a horse with a bridle. A horse, you put a rope on a horse's face and then use that rope in order to guide, maybe over here, maybe over here, maybe over here. So that is analogous to what happens to young people in this culture. It's like getting a bridle put on your attention. And then one learns to pay attention to the teacher or maybe to the television. And there's this natural inclination to pay attention when there is a screen. Like, I don't have a TV, but I'm in a household where there is a TV in another room. When I was in that room and I was trying to do my artwork, I always felt like the TV was looking at me, even though it was off. So I would put a little rainbow scarf over the TV. But this is the whole point, that there's this natural, programmed in and technological inclination to pay attention to a screen, even if it's off. And if it's on, and if it's talking, and it's emitting ideas and energy, we pay attention to it. And there's more. There's the reading reflex, which is where if you are literate and the word is written red or green, you cannot help but read it. And it affects you. And this is the whole idea behind advertising. So now we're getting down to, you are this little point and you're trying to go up this central column of this beautiful time field and converge over here. And you're driving down a road, literally like driving down a highway. And there's all of these advertisements that catch your attention and make your mind go in a different direction. This is the battle that we are presently facing. The battle is a battle for you to be able to think your own thoughts and drive on the highways of time that are the ones that you wish to drive upon, as opposed to having human society and the inceptors of language and the overlords of humanity tell you what they want you to think, so that you will drive on the highways and in the lanes that are convenient to them, and you will eventually smash into the guardrails and go onto the brick rails of what they want, which is death and disease and degradation. And this is really the literal agenda. It is the agenda to take your own capacity to have the steering wheel of your mind. If we had the steering wheel of our mind, we would all be in perfect alignment. Oh, look at that. I just made this go from being over to the side to being in perfect alignment. I'm not going to die now. Like, this is the amazing thing. We all wish to continue to be alive. It's a very basic program. So why would we think these thoughts that bring us to the membrane of death? And the answer is that happens because humans haven't been fully in control of their faculties. Humans have not been fully in control of their capacity to think. So meditation and mindfulness is the beginning of saying F you to the beings that don't want you to be able to think for yourself. It is basically the beginning of learning to play your own instrument of your own body and choose your own thoughts and say it is not appropriate for other people to determine what I am thinking. Now let's get into the economy and social structure, because there's a lot in the economy that says you must work for a boss, and while you work for that boss, you are not only selling your time, but you're selling your mentality. So it's the idea that in certain positions, it's not just like, okay, you work here for an hour and then I give you this many dollars back. It's you work here for an hour, and it's not just about what your body is doing. It's not just like being a draft horse, like, you know, you pull this cart for an hour and I only care about what your muscles are doing. That for many positions, for many jobs, it is also about your boss caring or your company caring about what your mind is doing. That it's like, oh yeah, you know, your muscles are going like this 10 million times a day, your factory job. What matters is that your muscles are doing the right thing. But maybe you can listen to your own headphones or think your own thoughts. There are many jobs where you're not allowed to think your own thoughts, where literally while you are on company time, it is considered only appropriate for you to think the thoughts that your boss wants you to think, and that doing otherwise is considered to be wrong, being a bad worker, or being irresponsible in some way. And here's what I'm trying to say to you. If you are selling your mentality for however many dollars per hour, there's no amount of money per hour, even if it's $1 billion, that is making it worth it, because it's literally like saying, for 1 hour, I'm going to grasp the steering wheel of your mind and jerk it violently to the side so that you begin to drive towards the guardrail instead of driving down the center of the highway. And it's like, I'm just going to do that for 8 hours a day for you for 5 days a week for the next 40 years. Like, that is not right. So now that I'm describing that to you, I hope that you are understanding better the levels of insanity that humans are participating in this malformed society, and why it is so incredibly necessary to change the formation of how we structure society and how we structure economy. So let me also just check to see, I know I've been doing a lot of talking, and let me just also drink a little bit of water, and I should check the text, because the chat, rather, I know that people are talking and probably have questions. Okay, but wait, I want to talk about a couple of other things too in terms of attention. So attention is not just you know, what is determining which steering, like think if I draw really quickly some of these little timelines, if these are timelines, timeline, and let's say this blue dot over here is the blue dot of your attention, that this is, if it's like a tendril. If I'm reaching forward on this line, I'm feeling these events of the future. And if I'm reaching forward on this line, oh, I'm feeling those events. Or maybe I'm feeling these events over to here. So now let's talk about the things that maybe not an advertising billboard is making you think, but maybe some occupier of the interstice. Because we have these external beings, like a corporate billboard or corporation, something that puts an advertisement on TV. Advertisements affect you whether you want them to or not, just like this music, this horrible music, affects you whether you want it to or not, all right? And we have to have an immune system, but it affects us anyway. That's overt physical stuff. But how about inner stuff? That we have these occupiers of the interstices, the bugs that have splatted on the windshield and have not yet been cleared away, the turds that refuse to flush, those occupiers of the interstices, consciousnesses that are stuck on the membrane between death. And they're like musicians that are so bad in the symphony that they smashed their own guitars on stage, and then they didn't have their own instruments to play anymore, and then they want to play your instrument. They don't have a place to go. They're stuck on the membrane between worlds, and they still want to affect the physical realm. So this is what I'm trying to say in terms of thoughts that affect the physical realm. You have this fatty idea catcher. Which thoughts do you want to catch? Which thoughts that come inside of you do you then wish to nourish and give life to? And we get to choose. It's supposed to be like, here is the hors d'oeuvre tray of the cosmos, and you get to choose which thoughts you eat and ingest and turn into some manifestation in the physical realm. However, many people are not in control of their thoughts because of genetic degradation. It's kind of like having a screen for your windows that's supposed to be like a mesh that keeps out bugs, but imagine there's a bunch of big holes in the screen and the mosquitoes fly right in. They're like, we don't care about this supposed barrier at all. We come right in. That's what is going on in the human mind for the past 10 or 20,000 years. We're supposed to have this wonderful protective energy field around us that only allows to come in thoughts that are loving thoughts, and we are in alignment with these loving, less dense emanations. And what has happened is, due to genetic degradation, everything comes in. There's big giant holes in the screen, and then it is very challenging because you've got this beautiful hors d'oeuvre tray that has some nice lovely crudités on it and some horrible poisonous lumps that you really don't want to eat, and then you have to choose between what's what and determine what's what. So when I make a painting, I don't start off with indelible ink. I actually start off with very light pencil lines. And if I make a mistake, I give myself permission. I'm allowed to erase it. And this is part of the artistic process. So it's the same thing with your mind. You don't have to feel like, oh no, I thought the wrong thought. Now I'm going to crash into the brick wall of death. Like, I don't want to give everyone this sense of hyper responsible, paralytically frozen hyper responsibility. That's how some people feel in front of a blank canvas. Like, it's like, here's your blank canvas, here's your pencil, and you're frozen. Now what do I do? So the answer is, you got to just make a mark, get going, because you can do it in pencil and figure it out as you go, and then erase the parts that are no longer relevant. So I do this all the time with my thought structure. And we recognize that it is the pencil of your mind, the paintbrush of your mind, that is creating reality. So whatever challenge you are facing, and I face the same challenges that everyone faces here in this milieu, you know, of time and space and culture. You got to have a place to live, and you got to have money, and you got to have water and food and all these different things that make life go. So how do we make those things happen? We do it by painting with the paintbrush of our mind. And if I paint something with my mind that I don't like if I think thoughts of the future, because what we're doing when we think about the future is we are connecting our insight with a bridge of attention to a particular timeline. Literally, you're literally building a bridge that will connect you to those life experiences. So some people, they're not in control of their own mind, and they might connect themselves to a level of experience they don't want to experience. Like, I hope that I don't crash into a brick wall and die. Like, that's not a thought that you really need to think, because that's pretty much connecting you to the reality where you crash into a brick wall and die. So the most effective thing when that happens is to say no thank you. No thank you is kind of like the waiter is offering you tidbits on the tray, and you're like, no, those don't look like very good tidbits to me. I'll just say no thank you. So yeah, when your mind is offered the opportunity to think a thought of personal, like, self-destruction or death or any of those types of horrible endings, you can say no thank you. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh no, hyper responsible, I just thought something, now something bad is going to happen. But we are all given not only a pencil with the mark making, but also the eraser means that you can take away what you don't want. And that's part of the creative process, that we're really in this very loving consciousness field. And it's meant to be not like, oh, you did the wrong thing, now you're going to get severely punished. It's not meant to be like that at all. It's meant to be a refinery and a place where you can experiment and learn about your own creative tendencies. Because what we're doing when I say we're giving birth and we're going into a new level of reality and all these things is we have cultivated the effective characteristics to be able to exit the wormhole, get to the next level of reality. And that's the advanced jazz band, where we actually play the good music together. And the playing of the good music together means thinking the right thoughts. So we're in this realm right now, not to give everyone, a negative view of things, but we're in this realm right now where everyone's been genetically degraded. And most people, their bodies are out of tune and they're tone deaf. They can't hear the right notes. They don't know what are the right notes to play. And most people keep on being diseased and hitting the membrane of death. I'll get to the chat questions in just a moment. And instead of having that level of experience, what we can do is begin to take total control of our own minds. So again, this little recording here should speak to anyone who is skeptical of my agenda or what I'm doing here, teaching about chakras, teaching about this math shape, teaching about the flying rainbow lasagna shape, that I am trying to give an idea of this is the map and this is how you be free and this is how you navigate more effectively. If I didn't want you to be free, I would keep all of this as a secret. I would be like, I hope those guys don't start to understand about the secret of attention. Because if they did, then they would start to say F you to all of these social constructs that want you to pay attention to things that you don't really want to pay attention to. And once you start to learn that that's the secret, that's how you get out of here, or it's how you transcend the limitations of this time and place. It doesn't necessarily mean you get out of here by flying away on a clank metal spaceship. It means you get out of the level of reality that you are in and get into an expanded level of reality, where you might still need to eat or drink or have a physical body, but where you get those things is from a very different source. And so that's what I did in the level 1 teaching. It's all about food. And I'll say this also, I'm not a vegetarian, and a lot of people ask me about this. No, I eat the food that is right for my body, and I don't tell other people what to do or how to live or give personal readings or health readings or anything like that. But what I will tell you is it's less about what you eat. Food is consciousness. It is solidified consciousness. And when you eat, what you need to do is build a bridge of attention from your insight to the food that you're eating. So if this is an apple that I'm going to eat, this is a thought form that the tree grew all year, thinking in divine partnership with the sun about making a reproductive organ called an apple. And when I eat that apple, what I should do is focus all of my attention on that apple. I should focus the attention on the sensations of chomping it up with my mouth and those tastes and everything. I should also focus on the consciousness of that apple. You can talk to it while you eat it. If you're eating a chicken, you can talk to the chicken while you eat it. And that is the best way to honor the life that had to come to an end so that you could continue your own trajectory through the time field. And eventually what we are transitioning into as we metamorphosize is we transcend the need to have the intermediary. If you still need plants as an intermediary to catch the sunlight, I'm pointing at the sun over there through the window, plants catch the sunlight and then we eat the plant is the intermediary. And what we are trying to do is to cultivate our higher faculties to get to the point where we can plug directly into the sun and the stellar network and not have to use the intermediary of any other life, and not have to domesticate or limit any other free expression of consciousness, so that for our convenience, don't have to domesticate tiny little grains of wild occurring cereal and turn it into big giant juicy sweet grains of corn that we can eat that are effective nourishment for our big giant brains. We don't have to do that anymore because that's not what we were designed for. We were designed to connect directly to the stellar network. So this is the whole idea. This is supposed to be where you eat through. And in human society, up until this point, instead of allowing everyone to eat what they want, it's kind of like you're told, eat this. Like I'm force feeding you. I'm force feeding you advertising. This is allowed. It's legal in this time and place. I just force fed you a thought through advertising. I'm force feeding you through schooling. I'm force feeding you by exposing you to ideas that you would not expose yourself to voluntarily. Religious training or whatever, you would not expose yourself to voluntarily. And all of those thoughts are like food that I forced you to eat that are making you go towards the edge, towards death, as opposed to towards eternal life and being aligned with the experiences that will that are like a perpetual motion machine where you continue endlessly without having to stop, without having to have any impediment. So I know I just did a lot of flapping of my moving mouth parts. Let me put down my little sculptures. Sorry, I'm ducking off camera to do that. Let me see what the comments are over here, because I know that people have been saying all sorts of good things. Okay. And I know I squint and scroll. Okay, so Charlotte asks, would your intent in using Wi-Fi, such as watching this uplifting webinar, affect the negative? Okay, really good question, because this is all about why I use technology in order to do these things. I go on Facebook, I use the Zoom, I'm sitting here in a house that's being filled up with all sorts of 5G emanations right at this moment. This is the whole reason why I do it, because right now humanity is not telepathic. Right now, if I only communicated telepathically the idea of the flying rainbow lasagna, it would get out there, but to a very select audience. Only a very limited percentage of the population would be able to really hear my song. Just like if I sang unamplified, if I just sang with my regular voice. I mean, maybe my neighbors here would hear me. I could sing pretty loud. Maybe they'd hear me down the street, but they wouldn't hear me a mile away or 10 miles away or 15 or 100. They wouldn't hear me in Australia. So I understand in this time and place, if I want people to hear me in Australia, I have to use the technology in order to do it. And I will also predict that at a certain point, we won't need these levels of technology in order to speak with one another. However, I'm also predicting we don't have to have a total cataclysm or a total reduction of our technology in order to have that experience. It's like we don't have to have the rug whisked out from beneath us in order to learn how beautiful it is to have natural telepathy. Kind of like people can go camping in the woods and they can get away from civilization, quote unquote, for a little while voluntarily in order to feel what that feels like. So I'm sensing that what we can do is we can have an off button for all of these emanations. Instead of having to lose everything and just trash it all so we can get some peace and quiet, we can say, let's press the off button for a certain amount of time and let's all recalibrate and feel what that feels like. And then we can use this when we want to. So this is, I think, a crucial conversation that needs to be had as 5G is poised to be rolled out. It's a very harmful and destructive level of technology. And there's been no real conversation about the impact that it has on human awareness and on the rest of the biosphere, on plants and animals. There's really no conversation that's being held about that, and it's a conversation that really should be held. Okay, I'm scrolling back. Yeah, and this is, Charlotte is saying one of her personal practices. Like I say, no thank you to thoughts that I do not wish to experience. She says to herself, I take that out of the law, like out of the law of attraction. So yeah, there are different catchphrases that I use. Sometimes I say no thank you, like no thank you, waiter, I don't want that. Sometimes I say with a little bit of attitude, I don't think so. You know, like if, and it's usually these thought invaders that come along. You know, there's someone that you love, the thought invader might say, maybe that person is dead in a ditch right now. And I like to say to those types of thoughts, I don't think so. And with a little bit of attitude, because they're basically saying like, here, would you like to put some thought energy into the worst thing happening to someone that you love? And you're like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't think so. I don't think that will happen. Or it's like a verbal way of breaking the spell. You're basically saying to that thought that is coming into your fatty idea catcher, no, you can't live here. No, you can't sleep on my couch. No, you can't eat out of my refrigerator. No, you're not a guest. Get out. You don't get to stay. And the more of us that do that, and I'm noticing a lot more people taking responsibility and being mindful in what they do, this is literally empowerment. And this is literally, it's like the more people that eat health food and don't eat GMOs, then the more those junk food businesses struggle to even stay alive, even though they're mostly government subsidized. Okay. Gaia says, when faced with negative thoughts, moving from the comfort zone, think the opposite despite works for me. Some people do that too. They think, cancel it out, cancel it, clear it. Again, there's no right and wrong. These are your personal paintbrushes or your personal erasers that you can use for the art project that you're drawing. Use whatever works for you personally. This person has a kangaroo leather hat, and she says she talked to her kangaroo leather hat and thanked it and showed it love and appreciation for its existence. This is exactly what we can do with everything that we have. I mean, that is much more of a respectful approach to all of the resources that we use. Guess what? We use minerals all the time. If we don't have minerals, we will die. We need minerals like calcium and magnesium and sodium chloride in order to stay alive. You can speak to all of that. These are all levels of consciousness. Back to, yes, thank you. Jeannie is saying, I do not want to fly away. I want to connect with my original soul family, and they want to find me too. So that's a really good point. That's that basic distinction between the escapism that a lot of people think, oh, having a physical body is so flawed and so choresome. Let's just get out of the physical. Or having a physical planet is just such a chore. Let's just get rid of it and fly elsewhere. That's the antithesis of what I am here for and what I am here representing and doing. That basically, like I as a walk-in, I put great effort into integrating my abstract energy into the physical body. That I am here very consciously, very intentionally, and I make great efforts every day to be in my body and to be here. And I eat very intentionally. Like, I don't tell other people what to eat, but I'll tell you that I eat, you know, non-genetically modified, non-poisoned food that is you know, as natural as I can find around here, because I feel like that is the best way to stay in this body and to have this body for as long as I possibly can. So that I'm not a person, like, I've had some friends who were very ambivalent about having a body and having to eat food. They were like, oh, how choreful, I have to eat some food now. I'm like, oh, goody, I get to eat some good food now. So, and I definitely, I appreciate the sensations of eating the food. I appreciate the feeling of health and vitality in my body. And I like to say this to people too. We won't always have this form of body where we're going. Like, we're at this level through our metamorphosis and transformation process. Like I've said this many times, when I first came into this body, I thought, oh, I'm just going to be a light eater. I didn't think I would have to be eating physical food. I had to learn, oh, we're at this level where we have to eat physical food. And I am in acceptance about that for about the past 17 years. We've been overlapping. We've been in a transitionary state between what we were and what we are becoming, what we are moving into. So we need to all love and accept ourselves in doing that. And I have found that there are wonderful opportunities to eat good food and to remember and make almost like a recording of the experience, so that when we metamorphosize out of this level of reality, we still have those memories to draw upon. And I like to joke or jokingly predict that in the future, we will have chefs of the mind, mental chefs, who will be able to vividly reproduce the sensations of basic ingredients that they ate when they had a physical body, and mentally broadcast that to other people and be like, oh, let me feed you a BLT with avocado, or let me feed you, you know, some wonderful ramen noodles with, you know, little shaved scallions on top, whatever. I had some good ramen noodles at a good restaurant the other day. That eating our food can also be about making the digital recording of the analog experience of having actual physical taste buds, and that is another way of honoring the life that was given so that we can be here. And at a certain point, we transcend having to eat the physical food, because physical food is a thought form. And at a certain point, we recognize that it's just a thought form, and that we can be as satisfied by eating a thought form. And there are some people physically in this world who have gotten to that level. You can do a little bit of research into Therese von Neumann. She was a stigmatic in Bavaria in the 1940s and was said to have not eaten for the last 25 years of her physical existence. But she wasn't skinny. She was really healthy. And it was because she had a profound belief in the Christian dogma and the light of Christ. I'm not saying you have to believe this, but that was her particular path. And she loved her conception of Christ so much that she felt that everything that she needed was in the Eucharist. And if she ate one Eucharist a day, then she would have everything that she needed. So that thought structure worked for her. And it's just an example of what can be done with these physical containers, that people, just like an athlete that can run 26 miles, you're like, that guy can run 26 miles. That means I can run at least 5 miles. So if people can live based upon their conception of divine love, just eating divine love, then we can transform into that level. And I think that's where we are heading as a species and as a planet. There's a couple of more questions here in the chat. Okay. Esubak says, we take inside all of the noise and knowledge and energy of our environment or influence. How to stop the wrong noise inside the consciousness. So this is, the answer is, it's what many different meditation schools and teachers and masters have been teaching. Like, I luckily don't have to teach about this because there's lots of schools of meditation. So there's different approaches to meditation. There's just self-observation, sitting quietly and watching. There's active forms of meditation. There's using a mantra, like a mechanical way of kind of overwhelming, overloading the mind. Each person needs to find what works for them, but it is basically like taking control of your body, because right now everyone has a mind that is like flailing limbs. I use the analogy also not to be condescending, but it's like being a little infant. when you're a little tiny infant and you're lying in your crib, your arms are going all over, you hit yourself in the face sometimes, you know, they put these little socks on babies because sometimes they hit themselves in the face. You don't know what you're doing when you're a little tiny baby, and it takes time to learn, like, oh, I can move my arm and make it go like this. And then it takes even more time to become a master and a virtuoso and use your arm to actually pick up the thing you want to pick up and actually write with a pencil and do what you want to do with it. So with the mind and with meditation, it similarly takes a very long time to learn to control the tendrils of the mind. And this also affects whatever you are thinking about. You're creating a bridge between yourself and that thing. So if you read a lot of stories in the news that are about rapes and murders, you are literally creating tendrils of connection between your mind and those rapes and murders. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't read about stuff like Pizzagate or indiscretions in politics or any kind of thing like that. We should all know about this. However, mostly what is presented to us in terms of reportage and journalism is not what we need to be ingesting. Mostly those are just, you know, random violent events that then connect us through minds to random violent events. So I found through social media, you can be a lot more selective about what you choose to expose yourself to. When I'm looking at a screen, I understand I'm eating, I'm ingesting, I'm having ideas come inside of me, and I'm very choosy about what I ingest because I understand that that is literally affecting my trajectory through time. And I'm encouraging everyone to be as choosy as I am about only choosing thoughts that have good ingredients, good wholesome ingredients that'll take you in the right direction as you're going through time. Okay. Jolted asks, how is one to understand the consciousness of a crystal? This is really good. He says, water has a crystalline form and retains memory. I keep reading about us being carbon-based life forms transforming into crystalline, but isn't compressed carbon considered a diamond? Do you have any thoughts on that? Yes. So, let me close this thing up and I'll do pictures if you want me to. So carbon, when all the molecules are all hinky-jinky and arranged in crazy ways, is just coal or graphite. When carbon has flat hexagonal molecules, and when they are arranged in lattice works that are flat, it's graphite, like what you have in a pencil. And that's why it's smeary, because the flat plates kind of rub against each other like this. But in order to turn into a diamond, those flat molecules have to have ridges added to them, like ridged potato chips. So I got a picture for this, and I'm squinting and scrolling. We'll get there. Here we go. Boom, boom, boom. This is taken from a little animation on YouTube. So these are the flat layers of graphite that are comprised of hexagonal molecules of carbon. That's the first stage. In the second stage, you can now see they're starting to get, here, draw with the pencil, they're starting to go ridged rather, like ridged potato chips. And now with the third picture, now you can see how they've become more angled and more, like potato chips. And then these individual layers, like this layer, this third layer, all get to be connected through this next vertical layer. And that is how carbon transforms from the graphite, opaque, soft, smeary form into the diamond, crystalline, brilliant, extremely hard form. It is basically by adding another dimension, taking something that was flat and folding it into a new dimensional state. So we all have this body that is made of mostly carbon, and mostly our molecules are arranged in that hinky-jinky arrangement, not like a perfect crystal. Crystals are also tessellated. That means that they're like puzzle pieces that fit together with no space in between. Kind of like these drawings and paintings that I do, and there's a reason why I do them like that. So a tessellation means all the tiles fit together with no space in between. So we have all of these molecules and atoms in our body, but right now they are not, or for most people right now, they have not been arranged up until this point in this perfect tessellation. And when we add an additional dimension, where's my lasagna? Add an additional dimension, we get to make flat, hexagons into ridged potato chip structures and tie them together in a new way. And that is how we create our diamond body. In the Far East, this is known as the Vajrayana body. And it is meant to be an indestructible body of pure consciousness that can travel through time and transcend death. And that is very much similar to what I'm talking about when I talk about using the flying rainbow lasagna to transform the structure of what we are on a genetic level. So all of that being said, consciousness is a vibration. And in order for us to be good musicians in the symphony, good musicians, like we need to listen to the music not only that's being made by other organic multicellular beings that we can say like, yeah, like you're a hippopotamus, you're alive, you're an animal, you're alive, you're a dragonfly, you're alive, you're a quartz crystal. Or how about this, like here's my little cubic zirconium in my ring. Is my cubic zirconium in my ring alive? Well, the answer is vibrations can live in a stone. Quartz can emit a vibration. Crystals can contain consciousness vibrations. So it is science's definition, and science is created by people that have a metabolism, that eat and that metabolize and that respond to stimuli. So science would say, well, according to our definition, a crystal is not alive. However, crystals can grow, crystals can emit vibrations, crystals can exhibit behavior. And same thing with molecules, molecular structure, like covalent or diatomic bonding. This is molecular behavior. So I'm trying to say there's some amount of anthropocentric hubris in science's definition of what is intelligence and what is life based upon your own container and your own exhibiting of what intelligence is. And that intelligence and consciousness and life exists not only even at the level of a crystal, but even at the level of a monoatomic crystal. Because if we look at soil, in order for a plant to be alive, there are these little tiny aspects of copper and magnesium and all these little tiny crystalline elements that are in the soil, and that those are essential for the plant's overall health, and that the gateway or the way that the crystals get to interact with the larger plants is through the microbiome. That there have to be one-celled organisms, little tiny experts that translate those little tiny crystals into the right format and into the right structure and go to the right place in the plants. So this is like saying this symphony of life is all connected from the microcrystalline structure to the macroscopic world of big giant blue whales and the planet herself. So science is not yet prepared to recognize that there could be silicon-based life on this planet. That the science is way behind. Science needs to flying rainbow lasagna. They're not ready for anything yet. They really need to get going. There's lots of good comments here, and I've been talking a lot. Okay, so Jeannie says that she started overtone singing and it is amazing and it can erase all unwanted thoughts. That is beautiful, and we can do some examples of this. Overtone singing, this is when you sing a basic primary note and then use the mouth and the soft palate in order to create the harmonic overtones. I've been talking a lot, and I'll see if I can do that with this. So usually there's the primary note, and in the background you might hear ooh, and there are people that do it really, really well. And that is the harmonic overtone singing. And yes, that is one very effective tool for getting out of the talking mind. That basically what we understand is that the talking, verbalized mind is an implant. It's not who you really are. So I do all sorts of things to transcend the verbalized talking mind. I play music on the piano. I do these extensive patterned artworks. I do different exercises and dancing and yoga. And it's basically whatever brings you to a state of bliss. And I don't mean bliss like idiotic lobotomized nonsense. I mean a state of no inner dialogue is necessary. Like when an athlete is dribbling a ball down the basketball court and they're doing complex calculations to see where are the other players and where's the basketball hoop and how fast do I have to go and how do I shoot the basket to make the ball go in there. That mind is working at such optimum high levels that there's no room in there for the traditional verbalized internal dialogue, or to think like, I really gotta fold that laundry. I really gotta wash those dishes. Like that's not available. Those levels of thought are not available because the complexity of the situation requires so many on-the-fly calculations. That is the blissful level of thought that I'm talking about. And so I experience that level of complexity and ease when I'm doing something at peak performance, like making my artwork or playing on the piano, a song that I'm really good at, or doing any of these things that are me in optimum conditions. And I would encourage everyone to find their own activity. For some people, it's running or whatever you're really good at. Find whatever makes you function at optimum levels, and that puts you into that wordless state of mind, and then do it as much as you possibly can. And you know what takes me out of that perfectly blissful wordless state of mind? Those little phone prompts, like when you have to talk to someone at the credit card company. If you want this, press 1. If you want this, press 2. If you want this, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I can feel you taking away my bliss with every phone prompt that you're giving me. So there are things that are literally designed, agendas in the society that take people out of their blissful, natural state of being. And so it's up to each one of us to be super badass and try to cultivate our true mind as much as we possibly can. Okay, so this person is saying, tetrahedron geometry is secret to crystalline form, and crystals can take you from 6th to 16th dimension depending upon geometry. Well, yes, that's what I would say, that this journey of consciousness that we are on is how to fold matter into a new format, and the matter that we each have access to is our bodies. Like if there's one piece of real estate that you own that you don't have to have a lease for, it's your body, and you get to do what you want to do with your real estate. So if you want to fold your structure into a crystalline structure, do it. Do whatever you want to do with your body, and no one else can tell you you're not allowed to. No one in society, not the president of the United States, not your mommy or your daddy or the Pope or anyone in religion. Like, it's your body. You get to choose what you want to do with it. Okay, I think I'm just going to say, if there are any other questions or comments, now is a good time, because I'm about to end the recording and I want to make sure that I got to everyone. And I hope that this has been a good combined teaching, level 1 and level 2, because these were basically both about the same idea of, when you cultivate your own consciousness, then that affects your ability to navigate the time field and to transcend the necessity of hitting the membrane of death. And so, you know, when I do this webinar, I'm hitting some of the high points of what is in the recorded lessons, but there's a lot more stuff that is worth delving into. So I encourage people to delve into the recorded lessons. So just want to make certain before I finish the recording, if there are any more things that I can clarify or any more questions. Good, thank you, you're very welcome. I'm sensing that I can just, because it makes it easier for me to upload if I don't make the recording 10 million years long. Let me just finish the recording. So thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. I'm trying to press stop.